I know this video is about rubber legs and how effective they can be, but while on the river, I had the pleasure of watching a beginning. It was certainly a beginning for me that way when I was that age. A little boy, out with his father or uncle, and they're out fishing, and he catches his first trout ever on a little Zebco spinning rod using worms. That's how it started for me. And it may be how it started for you, but it's certainly a pleasure to see that, because as I look back, some 60 years later, I can see this exact thing happening to me, and it's cemented into me a life of fly fishing. It's just a gradual progression from there into fly fishing, a curiosity. He may be watching other people do it, or a family member does it, but eventually he'll pick up that fly rod, and that's the beginning. 60 years later, he'll be on this crystal clear desert river all by himself, catching trout and remembering those young years on the river.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mike at Northwest School of Fly Fishing, the old fish hobo, and I want to tell you about a fly that I like to use throughout the season. Season meaning, our late spring, all through the summer. And one of the most effective flies or nymphs that I have in my fly box is the rubber leg. Good old rubber leg. This little guy right here. Good old rubber leg. You talk to different anglers, they'll say this is the killer fly and this is the magic fly, the woolly buggers or whatever the magical thing they are, and that's all true. They're all good flies. But for this old hobo, it's really I've come to appreciate, love, and learn a lot about the rubber leg. A rubber leg obviously has rubber legs on it. And it comes in a variety of different colors and sizes. They can be real small, they can be real big, like I use sometimes, and they can be in different colors, bright colors. They can be in any kind of configuration. And what makes rubber legs patterns so effective is those legs create movement. And you don't get, in a standard nymph, there's no movement. It's just moving down the river, hopefully in the target zone. But what rubber legs do is that those legs are moving. And that helps a lot when you're trying to attract a fish that's not so much hungry as it is, there's something. And you can buy them, or you can tie them in different colors and in different beads. One of my favorite rubber legs I like to use. I like to use a really bright glass red or green bead, and then I'll put orange legs on it, and I'll just go with that. Especially when I'm searching. I want to add color. If fishing's slow, I can just add color to it and see what happens. But depending on the size of the rubber leg, it can represent a variety of different bugs aquatically in the river. And the most effective way to use a rubber leg is when the river has a large population of stoneflies. And that's critical to you because you hear about stoneflies and how they hatch. Well, really, stoneflies don't really hatch. They really emerge, and what emerges is when they're moving into an adult state. And what makes this important to you is stoneflies do not float on the water; they crawl out of the river. They crawl out of the river. So trout really never knows there's a hatch going on. These stoneflies, by the hundreds or thousands, are daily moving to shore. And they crawl out on the shore and finish their metamorphosis. They'll crack out of their nymphal shucks and become a winged adult. And many varieties of stoneflies can live up to 3 weeks. And they don't go back to the water. They're just flying around doing their thing. And when they do go back to the water, that's when they lay their eggs and die. So during a stonefly hatch, one of the most effective patterns you can use is a stonefly pattern. But what makes the rubber leg so important is understanding that in many of the species of stoneflies, they don't have the capacity to swim. They can't swim. And when you get thousands and hundreds or even thousands of these nymphs crawling out of the river daily, all times of the day, some are bound to break loose. And stoneflies can't swim, and they'll tumble. They'll actually tumble down the river, just like that. They just float down the river like that until the river allows them to the bottom, where they'll fight and turn themselves and crawl out again. Now, trout themselves have very little or no cognitive thought. They can't think like humans. They can't think at all. But they have a very limited capacity of what they can use in their brain. Their brain has a size of half size of a pea. There's not a lot of brain matter in there to allow them to think. But what trout do have the ability to do, they do have the ability to learn. And when you have these stoneflies rolling down the river every day, they have learned that that's a good food imitation. And stoneflies can be quite large. The salmonfly stonefly is about that big. You get that tumbling down the river. So during stonefly hatches is a great time, or not even that. In any time of the river, if there's a good population of stoneflies in there, it's almost deadly to be using a rubber leg because they have learned that is food. And you get your bigger trout with those bigger flies and you're on. Now, some of the mistakes we make in using rubber legs is we're fishing in a river that doesn't have a stonefly population in it, or a very small stonefly population. And you should probably not be using it. You should be probably going to something else, and maybe using a stonefly later on in your strategy. Where if I'm going to a river with a large stonefly population, I'm almost always using a rubber leg in my opening strategy. I can move on from there. But the interesting about stoneflies is you buy them in stores and they got big beads on them, or they're leaded. Stoneflies don't have beads, and there's no weight to them, and they can't swim. So they're tumbling along the bottom of the river below the trout. And trout rarely, if seldom, will they dip down to feed. They want something right in their grill. So you don't want to weight your stonefly. You want it up in the column. So if you're drop shot nymphing, per se, is I want that the closest to where my lead is on the bottom, so it's going right in their grills. So where do you find out whether or not these rivers have stonefly populations in them? Well, that's hard to say. If you fish a river long enough, you'll see the telltale signs. You'll see the shucks on the rock, on rocks and logs, and even in the foliage, you'll see, or even on the ground, you'll see these empty nymphal shucks, and that's a very good indication. Obviously, there's stoneflies in that river. Another way to do it is get a hatch chart. Just Google hatch chart for the Madison River, and it's going to tell you, it's going to give you 12 months of the year, and listed right down on the left side is every single aquatic insect that lives in the river. You just look at that and you see where the stoneflies are. Oh, they have a large population of stoneflies. So, bottom line is I'm a guy that likes rubber legs. It's a very versatile fly. I can use it in many instances. I can use it. I have them in different sizes. I have rubber legs that imitate specific stonefly, and then I have just basically generic rubber legs, and I have them in large, and I have them in small sizes too. And they're a very effective fly, and I would suggest that you at least have a few of them in your box. I have a fly box that's just nothing but rubber legs in them, and I have a fly box with nothing but stoneflies in them. So it's a combination of those two things that you should be using. Now, I'm just adding to what other seasoned anglers might be telling you, but it's certainly a fly that I go to a lot when I'm nymphing in the season or during the summer. However, if you see me on the river somewhere and you want to see what I'm nymphing with, odds are you'll see my bottom fly is a rubber leg. So hopefully you'll get some out of this, and I would appreciate if you would support the channel by subscribing, and that will help me in the future and make this web channel grow. I've got over 110 videos right now, and they're instructional, and they're not instructional. They're just fun fishing, whatever the case may be. This is a school of fly fishing, and we like to instruct on something in fly fishing. So click that subscribe button, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you on the river.